For our discussion of 400 Souls, a community history of African America. Davis is a community organizer and writer who has written 2 books and countless short works. She's an Oakland native who resides in Little Rock. In 2004, she created the Underground Railroad Neighborhood Project, also known as TURN, which is an organization that bridges art and literacy with marginalized communities. In 2019, she founded and launched the March for Black Women and Girls, a community awareness initiative that provides victim services, builds coalitions, develops programming that centers Black women and girls, and brings awareness to the uptick in violence in the community. Davis is also an author and poet whose work documents her lived experience as a Black woman in America, as well as her advocacy work. I'll turn it over to Coffy to talk a little bit more about her work, her writing process, and her community organizing initiatives. Thanks for being here, Coffy.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me fine. I'm gonna hope this technology holds up. I appreciate everyone for joining me tonight. It's such an honor to be here and share my story. I am a huge griot. I love everything that has to do with storytelling, whether it's music, whether it's poetry, narratives, all those things. So I thoroughly have been enjoying the book. And I also love how you've encouraged community people here in Arkansas to interweave their story into that, because it's all our story. You know, it's all the story of us, and our little piece of the puzzle, our little world where we live does fit snugly into that huge narrative also. So thank you for having me. I'll just tell you a few things about myself, and then I'll share my screen, because I'm sure that I'll probably have some things on there that that kind of go more into what my work is. So I am an Oakland, California native, but my mother and my father are both from Arkansas. My mother is from Pine Bluff and my father is from Little Rock. They both went to Central High School where they met. And so basically I have generations of family that have gone through Central High School, including my husband now and my son, one of my sons. And so they joined the military, and then they went and had us everywhere else. We came back here, and I'll get into that a little bit later, what I call, you know, the opposite of the Great Migration, the great, what do you call it when you go back? Regression. We moved, my family, and also you'll find this also true, and I'm waiting on someone to do a study on it, that Black America has begun to move back toward the South. And I was a part of that movement. And so, so it was not uncommon for me to have friends in California who are from Arkansas, Louisiana, which I too have roots in Louisiana also, Alabama, Mississippi. So we always used to joke that nobody from California was actually from California past 2 or 3 generations. So it's an honor to share that part of my journey. When I moved back here, I went to school here. I went to UALR, and I had my son here. I moved back to my family's roots, I should say. And I had another son here. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. And in that work, I also talk about the trauma, community trauma, and just different kinds of trauma that I experienced in California, which wasn't unique to California. I know it was going on here and everywhere else also. But I carried that with me all these miles back here to Arkansas. Plus I had some family trauma here in Arkansas too. And so I wanted to, once I came here and I felt a safe space, I began to be able to write my story, which helped me heal, being able to share some of those things and connect with other people, and just find my voice and find my little spider web in the world. You know, a lot of people are looking for what they're great at, and I just didn't know until I moved here and started writing that was, okay, well, I'm good at something. And that was it. So I also, because of that experience with trauma, adverse childhood experiences, I was very drawn to community service work and working in nonprofits, even the health department, and you know, doing trainings for the state on cultural awareness and different things like that. And it eventually I branched off to start doing my own work for the TURN Project, which is a literacy organization that I created to bridge art and literacy with at-risk youth, what we used to call at-risk youth. Now we call historically excluded. And there's a lot of like marginalized youth. There's a lot of terms. Basically, kids that need our help, kids that have experienced or been impacted by trauma. So I started doing that, and then that led me into my latest endeavor, which was the March for Black Women and Girls, which specifically dealt with Black women and girls, because I noticed there was an uprise in violence here in Arkansas against particularly Black women in violence. And I thought it was an Arkansas problem at first because I was here in Arkansas and I was only looking at it through that lens. And then I realized it was a nationwide increase. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that work. I also spend some of my time doing contract work with organizations like the Family Service Agency, Center for Healing Hearts and Spirits, stuff like that. I'll do victim services with them. So all my work just centers around helping people heal from trauma, even some that are still in the midst of trauma, doing victim services for those, and also offering writing through trauma workshops to help them mitigate the same way that I did. I'm also a certified trauma-informed yoga instructor. So I spend my days also helping relieve trauma from our bodies, our physical bodies. So not just our minds, our mental, but also our physical bodies. So I'm gonna give you a little bit about my story. I'm gonna share my screen. That's me with all my many faces. That right there, the first one is me actually reading the names of some of our female victims or women that have suffered from community violence. I don't know what that glamour shot is in the middle. I just put it there. And then that's me in my intellectual look doing my my literary work. So the roots of me. Because we are talking about our stories and how we fit in this larger narrative, this is my grandmother. This is my mother's mother. So she was born in Arkansas. And I just saw this picture of her for the first time, probably in 2014. Had never laid eyes on my grandmother before. And she looks strikingly like me, you'll notice. She's very strong arms and legs like me, you know. My mom said she was real feisty like me. My mom is kind of a little bit more reserved. And so my mother was raised by her grandmother. My mother's mom, which you're looking at right now, her name is Geraldine. She died when my mother was three years old. So my mother never really got to spend a lot of time with her mother. My mother's nickname was Duchess. So I grew up with Duchess and Mrs. Marcinberg, which is my grandmother. Mrs. Marcinberg was an Arkansan, and she would come to California and teach me how to fish and how to can preserves and how to drink. My favorite thing in the world was she used to put pineapple juice in thermoses, and we would drink those. And so I never got to know my grandmother, but I knew her mother. And she we are from the Blackfoot Indian tribe also. So she looked more like a Blackfoot Indian. She had long, thick braid down her back. And I look more like my grandmother. And actually my grandmother is my mother's split image on her facially. Very small women in stature, but very strong. This player right here is my dad. He is from Little Rock, Arkansas, the son of Dorothy Thornton, and this is my mom when they met. They both went to Central. My mom was a couple of years younger than him, and she was actually one of the stories she tells me, and it became very instrumental to me. And I'll also share with you how it even became more instrumental here recently. She shared with me that she was pregnant when she was 17 with my oldest brother at Central, and that was the first year that they allowed women or girls to continue their education if they were pregnant. So she was at her class reunion, they have this picture of her walking across the stage pregnant. So my dad was in the military and he was in Germany at that time. So my mom, after she graduated from high school, she joined the military and she left, had the rest of us in different states. But that was very interesting to me because it seems that the women in my family do tend to have babies young, even the men. Because right now with my youngest son, he has a baby on the way. And I had to share this story with him because he's working on his PhD, way higher than a high school diploma, but it still feels the same when you're struggling through your education. And then you have this pivot that you have to make. So my mom was great at pivoting. She said she joined the military because she registered for UALR, but they told her she had to take a test and she wasn't good at testing and she felt like she would fail it. And she said, well, whatever, I'm just going to join the military. And she jumped on a plane and went to, I think the first place she went was somewhere on the East Coast for basic training. And I always, during times of me feeling like my mom may have not always made the best choices, I'm always in awe of how much strength she had in the 70s to jump as a woman, to jump on a plane and go to basic training for the Air Force. And that expanded our world tremendously. We were able to travel internationally and stuff like that and come back to California. And this is both of them in their military regalia, proud military family. My dad didn't serve as long as my mom. My mom, she served over 25 years. She was in Desert Storm and all that stuff. She lives now in Jacksonville Air Force Base. The kids that they had, that's me sitting on my dad's shoulders. I don't know if you can see me that clearly. It's one of my favorite pictures. And this is me and my brother Mike, the one that was born here in Arkansas. And that's me with my belly out. It'll all make sense in a minute when you see me as an adult. But I want to say that my mother leaving the state was very pivotal for us, leaving the state of Arkansas and traveling, but also her return was very pivotal to me because her leaving California and moving back to Arkansas was a catalyst for me moving to Arkansas and being where I am now. Yeah, I told you it was going to make sense. Still got my belly out. So this is me, and I'm gonna stop here for a second because this is where I'm gonna share my poems from. A lot of my poems and stuff that I write, that I have written, not the newer stuff that I have coming out is a little bit more healed, but a lot of the stuff that I write about that I had to purge when I moved here comes from this era of my life. So this era, what I call the coming of age era, and when I go to all the schools here, I spend a lot of time going to the schools in Central Arkansas and speaking to young people about violence and violence prevention, intimate partner violence, which is why I'm here at Children's Hospital now. I just did a speech on intimate partner violence here. It all came from this era. I tell them that this age, between the age of 16 to probably about 25, maybe 30-ish, in marginalized communities is the best age to intervene. It's one of the hardest ages for our young people. And I often share my story. So I'm going to share a poem. The poem is called Medusa, Reflections of an Angry Black Girl. And I know the title is got a little bit off-putting, and it's meant to be, and I'll explain. Oftentimes there's a stereotype of Black women being angry, but nobody ever talks about, like, why are Black women angry? Why? You know, I mean, for that matter, I know that there's Latino women that are considered angry. I know there's white women considered angry. I wanted to talk about why I was so furious. And I told my story from a first person perspective and first person present, which means that I'm telling the story as if the action is happening right now because I didn't want to be this mature retrospect person. I'm gonna read from that story, but the poem that I'm gonna do it from it's first person, but it's not present. So I'll get into it and then I'll explain it. And okay. I think I'll shorten it a little bit, but I learned to accept the fact that I had an attitude and I accepted it with no shame. I wore it like a ghetto Olympic gold medal and hoped it would eclipse my pain because that was easier than me having to explain and having to replay celebrating birthdays without seeing my dad's face. And it's a shame when you ain't even 8 and you're staring at the candle flame, just hoping and wishing that daddy is on his way. And one day I realized I survived without a single gift and it made me strong. And one day a DJ saved my life with a song. He told me to hold on and change is gonna come. So I started to sing along, and instead of being sad, I started to thank my dad. He had little to give, but he gave what he had. It was through disappointment that I learned to sustain. But what's strange is, as a woman, I discovered that my worst fear was that one day I might look in the mirror and see my mother's face. And the same mistakes she made engraved in my life like a birthright, like those braids she used to braid too tight. And if I could hit rewind, I'd remind her that the future was brighter, but all I knew then was that I looked just like her. Trying to find solace in the flick of a lighter, it was a constant reminder of what I didn't want to be. My American dream was green with seeds and it was rolled tightly and I inhaled it nicely, but it didn't fulfill my needs to show the world that a Black girl can have the same thing. Forget being a prom queen, I was pregnant as a teen, facing the same fate as a lot of Black girls my same age, writing my name on the application for aid and filling out child support papers as a teenager, just hoping and wishing that he would be able to become a daddy in 9 months, in 40 weeks, in 280 days when I became a mama, before I became a woman. And you want to know something? When I was younger, I would feel these butterflies in my stomach when I would see him. And he was so full of lies, but it's no surprise I believed him. And shoot, he never knew love either. It was just easier for him to see himself through my eyes. I was green-eyed in my fragile youth. I just needed to believe he was speaking the truth. And he was buying me all the latest tennis shoes and a double goose that protected me from the cold wind, just not the cold soul of men. And I was too young to know it then, but none of those gifts were nothing compared to what I was giving him, thinking that he was heaven sent. So I sent my letters to the pen for days, thinking he could display his love in boldface print on a page. Don't blame it on my age. It was just a heart that craved affection. I had baby's breath when my barely right breast started to change. I carried the earth in my womb, but seemed to only give birth to heartache and shame. And nobody fully explained that the pain I had to face in labor couldn't hold a flame to the things I had to face later. And Medicaid couldn't pay it. Food stamps or WIC don't do anything if the father won't visit. And that's knowledge. So try going to college with a backpack filled with bottles and a reality that some folks can't even swallow. I guess you could say I've seen hard times like Ray Charles, and though he said one day there'll be no more sorrows, I can't wait on tomorrow. And so I just folded up and put it in my pocket right next to peace. And then they were asking me if I wanted to be Greek. No, I just wanted one night free without my baby hollering and me arguing with my baby father. And that's what I pledged, to keep taking those steps so I could get ahead. And the same success that encourages me is what gave Truth the nerve to speak and made Rosa have the courage to stay in her seat. That's what makes me believe I could see my name beside PhD, no matter how long it takes me. See, I was the strength of my family tree and nobody could break me, but there was a part of me that I tried to hide because I despised my own vulnerability. Did I freeze? Oh, okay. The world was slowly killing me, turning me cold. I call this piece Medusa because with this reflection, I normally turn most people into stone. Okay, so in that piece, I cover a lot of themes. One of the main things is generational trauma, me facing the same thing my mom faced, not wanting to, thinking I was better than that. I'm not gonna be like that. And then boom, I'm smack dab in the middle of being that. Also, my dad, adverse childhood experiences or trauma doesn't necessarily look the same all the time. My dad was military, and then when they divorced, he moved to Arkansas. It still impacted me as, with the father not being there. My first relationship, we both were two unhealed people trying to sustain a relationship and having a baby young. I was younger than him. This picture, I was 19 years old, and it was probably a few months before I was pregnant. And I had my son. I was living in a homeless shelter, and I was 19 years old, and all I had was a high school diploma. And I didn't have a car, which that's not a huge deal in Oakland because you can take the bus and the train if you have money. But I spent a lot of days walking and carrying my son on my back. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time to dream. The dreams didn't really come until afterwards. So a lot of times when you're dealing with that kind of stress and trauma, you're just really getting through the basics in life. Dreaming didn't happen during this stage. That's my first apartment with my son. You see, he tore up the blinds. I was just happy to be there, but I probably look like I'm about 16, but by that time I probably was 20. I was an avid reader. So I knew that there existed, different lives, different types of reality. Very intelligent, just didn't know how intelligent I was. Never wrote a poem in my life. This is me and my son at the San Francisco Pier. And this other picture is me and my son. There used to be little photo booths before we had all this Instagram, social media stuff. And I used to take them down and take these little cheap pictures for like $5 or $10. Stepping into my greatness happened when I moved here to Arkansas, and I was able to breathe, and I was able to put all that good stuff or bad stuff in poetry and purge it out. Really able to just get all that stuff out of my system and talk about it and connect with other people. My books have been in a lot of places locally. This is Mosaic Templars right here. It's at Amazon too. The things that I went through led me to doing the March for Black Women and Girls, wanting to help other women that are dealing with trauma. Also noticing here in Arkansas ranks number 4 in the nation for murders of Black women and girls. Only Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Missouri are ahead of us. And I wanted to bring attention to that. So these are just pictures from my march. People bringing out, their loved ones and putting faces to it. Those are the roses that I hand out to signify all the women that are lost. The first year I did, there was 93 names. The next year there was 137 names. The first year was only a 3-year period, by the way. And this is all over the state of Arkansas, but nowhere else, just Arkansas. It brings all kind of people out that want to support Black women and girls in the community. It's also a time, not just a time of mourning those that are gone, but celebrating those that are here. These are students at the Arkansas Baptist College. You see, they're getting down, having a good time. Like I said, it draws everyone out. Men come out. The men are the ones that hand out the roses. And this is just the news coverage and different things that that has happened. I have been able to bring awareness to that. I have been able to speak in different places. I got the same shirt on today because I was up here speaking at Children's Hospital. The son that I had at that time that was in those pictures, this is him looking so big. This is him in high school. This is in Arkansas. You can tell by the lawn chairs and the outdoors living. This is that same son looking all handsome. He's 27 now. So that was 27 years ago, that poem I wrote about. He lives in Seattle now. He moved back to the West Coast and left us here. And I'll just kind of let some of this stuff play, but this is just some of the work that I do, just kind of letting everyone know about the red flags and warning signs of abuse, giving people resources. I aim to help people that find themselves in the same situations I was in, if not worse, and show them that there's a way out. I mean, I may have not ever gotten to the level of PhD yet. And I don't intend to, honestly. I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay with, I'm gonna pause that, sorry. I think I'm okay with where I am. I went to grad school, but my, I don't know how to pause it, hold on. Okay, I went to grad school, but the thing about our stories and history, sometimes you just move the goalpost or you just move the flag a little bit further. I mean, and you know, my youngest son who I had here in Arkansas, he went to Parkview and he graduated in December from UALR and he's now at UAMS working on his PhD. So because of the things, first of all, what I call the Great Migration in reverse was one of the most pivotal moments in my life that actually was very life-changing for me to come back here and for my children. You know, like I said, my youngest was born here. My oldest was from California. I feel like had I not made that decision, they wouldn't have been able to achieve the things that they did. But just being able to get, you know, those stories to go just a little bit further and a little bit further is very important for me. And watching my son achieve those things and knowing that I played some small part of it because of certain choices that I made. These are some of the ladies that are lost to violence in our community that I should usually share with a lot of people that when I do presentations, because I want to put a face to people's names. I don't just want to have their names there. I want people to see who they are, what they sounded like, what they look like. And these are just some of the stats that I usually share. I just shared these up here. And I'll just let this continue. These are some of the marches that I do. This is some of the work. This is the Little Rock march that I did the very first year. It brought out people like Chris Jones, Goldie Gaines, people running for office. This is in Atlanta. I took the march out there with Black Femicide, which also is an Arkansas-based organization. Went to Houston, had a huge march there. This is Little Rock at Arkansas Baptist in 2022. We call ourselves the Dope AF crew. That's the women that helped me with the march. We went to Washington, D.C. and represented Arkansas. This is the Arkansas crew. And this is the march this year. I'll kind of go faster through these. I just thought it was important to read everybody's name and to give everybody their due diligence. Their time here on earth wasn't in vain. So that's just a little snapshot of the work I do. I hate that I had to go through, fast forward all through it, but I did want to, before I go, share one more small piece with you. Do I have enough time? Okay.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
Okay, this one won't actually be a poem. This will actually be from my memoir. So because I mentioned so much about how pivotal it was for me to move from California to Little Rock and how life-changing it was, I still dream about it to this day. And I noticed that a lot of the work, even the fiction work I do, talks about transitioning from Arkansas or from California to Arkansas. For some reason, I'm stuck in that moment. This is what the moment was like for me. By the way, I rode the Amtrak train from California to here. Didn't have the luxury of flying. It was a 3-day train ride. And this was 20 years ago. So I didn't have a cell phone. I get on the Amtrak. I get on the train at Amtrak's newly built Emeryville station. I have this weird feeling. I had a dream last night about traveling back in time. I dreamed that when I got off the station in Little Rock, that it was going to be the early 1900s and everything was black and white. I thought that I would panic, but I stepped on the train and sit Kali in my empty seat. My mother sits in the seat facing us. So my mother traveled to California to get me. She has a blanket and a pillow. I look out the window at Oakland, the hills, the Pacific Ocean, and I feel homesick already. If home is where the heart is, then mine is beating along the coastal sky. For me, the sun sets in the west. Okay, I didn't realize that was still playing. Okay, there's a chorus of voices in my head. You're stupid. You're not going to like it. I have jarring flashbacks of my friends. My memories comfort me. They love me. They sing me into restless sleep on the hard cushions on the train. I doze off with Kylie snuggled up under a blanket beside me. When I wake up, we're passing through snow-capped mountains. I look out the window at the scenery. It doesn't snow in California. I look at my mom sitting across from me, knees drawn up underneath an army blanket, hands like twisted roots. Her skin is corn whiskey brown. The wrinkles on her face seem deeper and more set in now. If a woman isn't loved, does she wither away? Does she rot away like a tree with no sun? I think about her traveling on a bus from Arkansas, miles away to get me from Oakland. I watch her looking out the window, and for the first time, she seems regal. I know now her love is measured in neck bones, simmering on the stove, and fresh lemon pies with Jackson vanilla wafers crushed into the butter. I always seemed to dance to music that she couldn't hear. No matter how much I jumped and thrashed and waved my arms, she gives me a timid smile. She's not a city girl. I know in the South she can tell time with lightning bugs and moonshine song of crickets. I wonder what childhood memories she has tightened up in her mind like Granny's mason jars. I'm happy that she went home. I want to see her within the context of her own life. I want to know what her childhood was like. I know her memory runs deep as the Arkansas waters. I never knew my mother's mother, who was buried in the word when my mother was only 3 years old. I've spent 21 years trying to find her in the wilderness of my mother. A lot of the time we see the scars, but we don't see the pain. As Rumi says, the wound is a place where the light enters you. I get it. I start to understand that her womanhood is rooted in endurance and quiet resolve. I watch my mother walking barefoot on broken pieces and act like it doesn't hurt. That she opens her eyes each day to a new sunrise and goes on to hammer away at the stone and dig herself out with her bare hands is bravery. Every woman has a right to fight herself free. That she dances in summer thunderstorms and hums spiritual songs unconsciously. Her life is her story, and I am the encore. I look at her and I see my reflection. I celebrate her with every new chapter of my life. I think about seeing my father again. His southern drawl like an acoustic guitar, hot and humid like the air. I want to sit under him like a big oak tree and feel protected from the world. I want my son to play in the yard that's fertilized by his grandfather's sweat and tears. I sit on a train with my stomach in knots on the brink of new possibilities. That's it. So that was me traveling back here and really, I would say rediscovering myself, but I think I moved here and I think I discovered myself. I think I found out who I really truly am. I found out that I was a writer. I found out that I am my mother's daughter. And I found out, a lot of things about my family that I would have never known, and where I come from. And there's a lot of peace that comes, when you find out your roots and you find out who your people are and people that walk and talk like you and wear their hair like you, eyes, look like yours. So there was a lot of me coming home to myself. And so that's it. And that's my share. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. That was really wonderful. I really appreciate you, especially sharing your writing and your work in the community. For those interested, I'm actively trying to get this data from Coffy so that we can preserve all of the work she's been doing to document the femicide in Arkansas specifically. So hopefully that will end up in the archive, and that's something that folks can access and engage with, and that these stories won't be lost. But I wanted to open, we're going to allow folks to ask you questions, but I was curious just to tie your lived experience to the book. Was there a specific essay or creative work in the book that you felt connected to that mirrored kind of your experience, something that really spoke to you?
Well, I didn't get a chance to read all of it yet, but I definitely connected with just the overall story, threading together different stories, and I guess the urgency to get our stories on the page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't know if I shared all this, but I have like bukus of books because there's so many stories that bubbled up inside of me, you know, when I moved here. And so just that urgency to tell it, and to also the communal way of telling it, you know, in unison with other people.
Yeah, for sure. And just one more question. The book closes with Dr. Keisha Blaine explaining that she doesn't feel that she's yet living her ancestors' wildest dreams. And I wondered if you felt the same way, if you feel like there's still a lot left to fulfill, or if you do feel like you're living your ancestors' wildest dreams.
That's
It's a big
good question. I feel like if this was a marathon, I guess, or what do you call a relay race? I feel like I'm passing the baton to those that will. You know, like Tupac has a phrase where he says, "I may not change the world, but I'll spark that flame that changes the world." I kind of feel that way. Like it's still in the process of being those wildest dreams, and I'm sparking that. I'm continuing to do my part to spark that. And I know my son, he took the baton way far. So, you know, and I'm hoping that the next generations after that will continue to do the same.
That's wonderful. I especially really like that Tupac quote. That's awesome. Does anyone else have questions for Coffy? We're quiet today.
Let me think. I covered everything. I do, if you notice, I do write and kind of, especially with my poetry. I was never taught to write poetry until after I became a poet. And so everything that I did was kind of just like my own rhythm and flow of whatever I felt like, you know, how it should go. I guess you could say free verse. I did a little slam, which I never really preferred slam, but I prefer to write without boundaries. And I just feel like just writing and throwing it on the page. I do like rhyme, as you notice, I mentioned so, a hip hopper, a rap artist. I do like rhyme in all forms. So I like all music, and especially hip hop music. Hip hop music has a lot of commonalities with, you know, with I Am a Pentameter and all that. With, well, my first degree was English, so it had a lot in common with those British writers we had to study, and so I love it. I love the style, and I also love that untaught, just jagged edge that that hip hop is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if no one came up with any questions and there's no pressure, I'll go ahead and stop the recording so we can move to the book discussion.
Okay.
Thank you again so much, Coffy,